Michael Thompson woke up every morning before sunrise. In his small house on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa, the silence was broken only by the soft hum of an old coffee maker and the ticking of a wall clock that had been there for decades. At 70 years old, Michael moved slowly, carefully, as if his body carried not only age, but memories he never allowed himself to revisit. He had been a widower for almost 15 years. Since Ellen passed away, the house felt larger and emptier. She had been the only person who sensed that something in Michael's past was unresolved, though he never found the courage to tell her the whole truth. After her death, routine became his shield. Same chair, same mug, same quiet mornings. To the neighbors, Michael was a decent, reserved man. He had worked most of his life as a city bus driver, following fixed routes, watching other people's lives unfold through the windshield. He retired without ceremony, grateful for the quiet, convinced that what was left behind should stay buried. But long before Iowa, long before Ellen, Michael had lived a different life. In the early 1970s, he was a young man living in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. Back then, he was full of plans and fear in equal measure. That was where he met Susan Miller, a bookstore clerk with kind eyes and an easy laugh. Their relationship grew quietly, shaped by long walks, handwritten notes, and conversations about dreams neither of them fully understood yet. When Susan told him she was pregnant, Michael's world collapsed. He was young, unprepared, and terrified of judgment. His family pressured him to leave, to start over somewhere else, to avoid a scandal that could follow him forever. And so, one cold morning, he packed a small bag and left without saying goodbye. He promised himself it was temporary, that one day when things settled, he would return. But days became years, fear hardened into silence, silence turned into distance, and distance became a life built elsewhere. Michael married, he worked hard, he tried to be a good man, but at night, when the house went quiet, he often wondered about Susan, about the child he never knew, about whether he had been forgiven or forgotten. That morning in Des Moines felt no different from any other, until Michael opened his mailbox. Among utility bills and advertisements, there was a single envelope, yellowed with time, his full name written carefully across the front. No return address. His hands trembled as he carried it inside. Sitting at the kitchen table, Michael opened the letter slowly. The first line mentioned Susan's name. His heart stopped. The letter explained that she had passed away months earlier. Before her death, she had left instructions for someone to find him. There was something he needed to know, something that could no longer remain hidden. The coffee grew cold, the clock kept ticking, but Michael felt as if time itself had paused. For 40 years he had outrun his past. That morning, it finally caught up with him. Michael spent the rest of that day holding the letter in his hands. He read it again and again, hoping that the words would somehow change. Susan's name stirred memories he had locked away for decades. Her voice, her patience, the way she believed in a future he was too afraid to face. The letter explained that Susan had remained in Ohio her entire life. She never married. She raised her child alone, working long hours and refusing help. Before she died, she made one final request. She did not want anger or revenge. She wanted truth. She wanted Michael to know what his absence had meant. That night, Michael barely slept. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring into the darkness, replaying the moment he left town. For years, he had convinced himself that disappearing was the least harmful choice. Now he understood it had only delayed the pain. The following day, Michael visited Tom, an old friend from his bus driving years. Tom listened quietly as Michael confessed everything. When he finished, Tom said something simple but heavy. Running does not erase mistakes. Facing them is the only way forward. Those words followed Michael for days. Finally, on a gray morning, he made a decision. He bought a bus ticket to Columbus, Ohio. It had been more than 40 years since he last stepped into that city. Just seeing the destination printed on the ticket made his chest tighten. The journey felt endless. Through the window, Michael watched fields and small towns pass by, each mile pulling him closer to a version of himself he had tried to forget. Fear walked beside him every step of the way. When he arrived in Columbus, the city felt both familiar and distant. Buildings had changed, streets were wider, but certain corners stirred memories he could not escape. He followed the address written in the letter to a modest house on the edge of town. Michael stood on the porch longer than he should have, fighting the urge to turn back. When the door finally opened, a woman in her early 40s stood before him. Her expression was cautious, her posture firm. She introduced herself as Emily. Inside, they sat across from each other at a small kitchen table. Emily spoke calmly, explaining that she had always known who her father was. Susan never lied, but she also never forced answers. She waited, hoping Michael would return on his own. Michael felt tears well up as Emily spoke about growing up without a father, about watching her mother struggle and sacrifice. She said she was not there to accuse him. She simply wanted to understand why he had left. In that moment, Michael realized that this meeting was not about his guilt alone. It was about the life shaped by his silence. And he knew the hardest part of the story was still ahead. The room fell silent after Emily finished speaking. Michael felt as if the air had thickened, pressing against his chest. Sitting across from him was not just a stranger, but the daughter he had abandoned before she took her first breath. Emily's voice remained steady, but her eyes revealed years of unanswered questions. She spoke about growing up independent, about learning early not to rely on anyone. Susan worked constantly, rarely complained, and never spoke badly of Michael. That silence, Emily said, was sometimes more painful than anger. Michael tried to speak, but the words struggled to form. He had rehearsed apologies for decades, yet none felt enough. No sentence could restore birthdays missed, fears faced alone, or moments that never happened. Finally, he told the truth. He admitted his fear, the pressure from his family, and the cowardice that led him to leave. He confessed that he thought about returning many times, but each year made it harder. Shame grew heavier than distance. Emily listened without interrupting. Then she stood and retrieved a small box from a shelf. Inside were faded photographs, letters, and a worn notebook. It was Susan's journal. Emily read aloud passages describing hope, disappointment, and a love that never fully disappeared. Each word struck Michael deeply. He realized his absence was not a single mistake, but a lifetime of consequences. The guilt he carried was no longer abstract. It had a face, a voice, and a history. The tension reached its peak when Emily revealed her current struggles: health concerns, financial pressure, a life built with resilience but without support. Michael felt the weight of responsibility crash down on him. In desperation, he offered help, money, a place to stay, a promise to remain. Emily stood back and shook her head. She said help does not erase abandonment. She did not want rushed gestures or guilt-driven promises. She needed time to decide if he truly belonged in her life. She asked him to leave. That night, alone in a small motel, Michael lay awake staring at the ceiling. For the first time, he understood that forgiveness was not something he could demand, and the fear of losing his daughter forever was greater than anything he had ever known. The following weeks passed slowly. Michael returned to his quiet routine, but nothing felt the same. Every morning, he checked his phone with a mix of hope and fear. He respected Emily's request for time, even though the silence was painful. For the first time in his life, he chose patience instead of escape. He began to change small things. He sold his old truck, downsized his home, and organized his finances, not to impress anyone, but to be ready. Ready in case Emily needed him, ready to show through actions that he was no longer the man who ran away. One afternoon, a message finally arrived. Emily asked to meet. They chose a public park in downtown Seattle. The day was cloudy, the air calm. When she arrived, she looked different, lighter but cautious. Emily said she had read her mother's journal again. She realized Susan never wanted anger to define their lives. Susan believed people could change, even if forgiveness took time. Emily was not offering instant closeness, but she was opening a door. Michael listened quietly, tears filling his eyes. He thanked her for the chance. He promised consistency, honesty, and presence. No grand speeches, just commitment. They started slowly. Coffee once a week, short conversations, shared memories built one step at a time. Michael helped with medical appointments, paperwork, and daily needs without pressure or expectation. Months later, standing beside the ocean, Emily admitted something simple but powerful. She said she no longer felt alone. Michael understood then that redemption is not about erasing the past, but about choosing differently every day. This story reminds us that time cannot be reversed, but relationships can be rebuilt. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more real stories about life, choices, and second chances.